Hi, I'm Langdon White, and thanks for joining us today. I'm the Chief Architect at OHO Interactive. And here I'd like to talk a little bit about Drupal, as I'm sure all of you know. However, specifically what I want to talk about is the problem of getting external data into Drupal, and how do you make it available inside Drupal such that a themer or a normal kind of Drupal user can access that data. So it might be a content editor or maybe an advanced content editor, so that they can actually incorporate the data into existing Drupal infrastructures. So, as a general overarching kind of rule, when you're integrating data into Drupal, the normal mechanism is to essentially ingest the data. So rather than having a remote data source that you access over some period or in real time or something like that, normally with Drupal, what you actually do is implement the data locally. So there's a few different ways to do that, and most of them are fairly easy, and so we'll talk about a couple of them in order. First and foremost, we'll talk about kind of leveraging public data standards. So this is to integrate various feeds of data, so RSS or Twitter or OpenSearch. All of you, I'm sure, are familiar with RSS, which is actually a number of different protocols that are all kind of categorized under this RSS mechanism. Every time there's an update on the server, it pushes information out, usually in some sort of XML flavor, so that you can consume it on the client end. Twitter, much the same way, except with a kind of a special protocol for itself. OpenSearch is a little bit more unusual, which is basically this allows the aggregating searching of multiple search environments. So there's an OpenSearch Drupal module that allows you to integrate your search with external search sources. So this is a little different than the normal mechanism of integrating data with Drupal, in that this actually does live remotely and stays remotely. However, the module where you kind of identify all the different open search pieces allow you to kind of make it a unified experience inside of Drupal. Kind of moving on to more traditional data ingestion. So say you have a need for one of the things we often work with a lot is universities, educational systems in general. So one of the common scenarios is we want to ingest the various class information into Drupal to allow for course schedules or to allow for marketing aspects around academic programs and that sort of thing. So when we do that, we often will bring in the data natively into Drupal, and so we can do that in a couple of ways. One of the most kind of traditional programmer models way to do this is using the services module. There are a couple of various servers for the services module. One is REST, one is XML RPC, etc. And what you do is you write a script, some sort of cron job maybe, or some other kind of script that's run on some period that actually queries your backend legacy data store and then populates the data inside Drupal using the services module. Basically, you create nodes or retrieve nodes and update them using kind of normal CRUD operations using either some kind of service infrastructure. A more Drupal-esque way to do things is to use Table Wizard and or the Migrate module. Table Wizard allows you to essentially point at a remote data store and ingest that data kind of in a semi-automated fashion so that the data is available inside of Drupal. It's actually in the midst of potentially being replaced by the data module. However, in most scenarios that I've worked with, the Table Wizard module is still more of what I need, and the data module has not kind of caught up yet. The Migrate module is more for kind of one-time load in general. It's kind of like Table Wizard in the sense that you attach to a remote data store and bring in data, but you do it more kind of on the command line, as it were, often using, say, Drush, so that you can kind of do one-time loads in as an efficient way as possible. Another module for that that does a similar kind of things is the Node Import module. However, it's a little less automated, a little more manual, but if you just have to get that CSV file into Drupal, it makes a great choice. Another mechanism that we bring data in is actually using iframes. This obviously has some challenges with some older browsers, but has gotten actually a lot better with with the modern browser set. So we tend to use iframes to reach out to that other system and actually render the form pages from that site, and then we integrate some sort of SSO mechanism to automatically log in into the other application. There are modules that do the SSO as well. However, in most cases, we actually write this custom because it's really not very difficult. It's usually just some sort of API call, a form post or something, and then holding on to cookies and passing them around. So it's usually not a lot of work, so we tend to just manually implement that. Now, kind of the other way that you want to integrate your systems is actually getting data out of Drupal and into those other systems. So again, the services module is great for this. Actually, this is probably the best recommended way if you have something that's more complex than can be handled with something like RSS or XML. So in other words, you want to do kind of real-time updating, or you want to do lots of changes, or maybe there's a very different format on the other end. The service module is nice because it will actually defend you against changes to the underlying Drupal core. So if you use the services module, you have that layer of abstraction. Your code should continue to work even if Drupal core changes, so that because the services module will continue to work in the same way. Or you can modify the services module to keep that abstraction layer in place. Obviously, there's also RSS and XML, which is fairly straightforward. It's more of a publish-subscribe model. Highly efficient, very useful, but only works for certain kinds of data. And then the last one we've actually used quite a lot too is the component module, which is kind of like the reverse of the iframe mechanism, which allows you to actually request a particular view out of Drupal for a particular or request a particular view, so that you can render that on the client side in a fairly straightforward manner. And it's a RESTful looking interface, and it's pretty easy and simple to use. And the example code that comes with the module also shows you some nice wrappers to make it simple. This is also a good mechanism if you want to do Ajax loads in ways that the Views Ajax tools don't support. A couple of examples of where this integration takes place is with MailChimp. We actually use the Drupal MailChimp module to synchronize the users. Then we leverage tokens, for example, to extend what information is available in MailChimp, as it kind of says on the slide. But this is kind of, we want to integrate with this external tool. There's some nice modules out there that already allow for most of the integration, and then we often want to add to it, and we'll often use things like the tokens module to simplify or to parameterize our integration points. And then another example is actually there's a Beers of the World kind of site that actually uses the services module so that an Android phone, a FAT client, can actually communicate with the services module inside of Drupal and render the data in a way that's completely different than what Drupal normally renders. Drupal does some great stuff with mobile, but sometimes when you want to do a mobile application, you want to do something that's much lighter weight, or etc. But that means but with the services module, you can avoid having to kind of risk your infrastructure investment in Drupal and just kind of get the data out of it in a way that is more conducive to the client application platform that you want. And I think that's pretty much it with the integration side. So what I also wanted to talk about was kind of when you talk about multiple sites, which is kind of like an integration issue as well, however a slightly different one in that now you have multiple Drupal sites that you want to kind of integrate with each other. And what we do for that a lot of the times is look at the kind of use case scenario. If we want to do true integration, I think that's really what we talk about when we talk about the domain access module most of the time. But we'll just kind of start from the top. So there's a few different ways to have multiple sites in Drupal. The most common, obvious way to do it is actually to have multiple Drupal instances installed with separate databases, all kind of living in their own little either directory structure or their own servers, such that they're wholly independent. This is great if you need wholly independent sites. For example, maybe you're a hosting provider or something, and you want to be able to give different modules to different users or different buyers, or you want to be able to upgrade them independently. You want to have some clients who are on Drupal 5, let's say, or you don't want to. You have some clients who are developing already on Drupal 7, but you don't want to force that on all of your clients. So another mechanism to the multi-site technique is actually to have one Drupal instance and use the kind of sites directory in kind of the way it was intended, and actually have the multiple sites under there. However, often, I think in our experience is that this would be good again for the kind of the hosting environment. However, if you're that distinct between the various sites, there's often not a lot of value to actually having them all within the site's kind of infrastructure. It might actually be easier to use multiple Drupal instances. It's probably going to be just as efficient, aside from a little bit of extra storage for the files. So, kind of moving on to the domain access module, this is the scenario I think that we see most often, which is where you want to host multiple sites, but in fact they're all carried under one brand. So again, going back to the educational example, you have a university that shares a bunch of colleges, and all those colleges want to have their own sites, their own content editors, some of their own special functionality. But the university at large their IT department wants to offer content editing and stuff, but with a minimum of maintenance. The university level also wants to incorporate their brand into the sub-brands so they can have some sort of overarching model. And then the other thing that you see a lot of is that they want to share content between the various aspects of the site. So, for example, College X may have exactly the same address as College Y. If all of the university is on one basically big plot of land that all actually has one address, let's say, maybe the maps for that might be great, and they're all Google Map integration and nice mashups and all that kind of stuff. But you could just share it across all those different sites. So that's what domain access might let you do. However, it also allows you to have distinct look and feels between the various sites so that you can maintain an individual identity and an individual brand. The last module is that we kind of talk about for multiple sites is the organic groups module, and this is kind of a reverse problem where what you want to do is you want to actually allow users to define their various integration point or their various different sites, so that they can actually kind of like domain access, except in reverse, in that you want to have one shared Drupal installation. You want all the users going to the same place. However, you want to allow them to coalesce around certain topics or certain items, and then to almost program their own subsites so that they can make communities, etc. So I think again with kind of the university example, where we might see models like this is intramural sports or various clubs where there's some approval process around whether a club, quote unquote, is official and recognized. For the most part, it's all kind of user driven, with maybe some sort of checkoff level at an individual university level to say, yes, this club is approved. But most of the site content administration, etc., is just the local or just the users actually inputting data and developing that subsite. So hopefully that covered a little bit of integration in Drupal and multiple sites. Basically, this is kind of a tips and tricks talk. I just want to kind of give you an overview and some ideas about how to apply these, or some ideas for solutions to these common problems. I think we actually have a more in-depth talk as well around domain access in particular, and we'll probably be doing some more in-depth talks around data integration and maybe trying to solve the problem of where you want to leave the data remote. So thanks for your time.